Mace Windu was one of the Star Wars universe's all-time greatest badasses. He was also one of its foremost military commanders, an accomplished strategist who led the Grand Army of the Republic to victory on many occasions. While some Jedi fought in the Clone Wars with reluctance, Windu didn't hesitate to get involved from the get-go, and his faith in the Republic didn't waver until the very end. As far as tactics go, Windu's approach to battle was reckless to say the least, perhaps even more so than Anakin Skywalker's. It was undeniably effective, however, and in this video, we'll be explaining why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
There wasn't a Jedi in the Order more dedicated to the prosecution of the Clone Wars than Mace Windu. At the start of the war, he actually gave up his title as the head of the Jedi Council so that he could devote more time to command. Those of you who've read the Revenge of the Sith novelization should know why he was so passionate. He valued the Republic more than anything else, seeing it as the embodiment of everything the Jedi fought for, and he was willing to do anything to protect it. As a member of the Jedi High Council, Windu was given the rank of High General. He commanded Systems Army Alpha, which included many of the most elite units in the Grand Army of the Republic, including the 91st Reconnaissance Corps, the 327th Star Corps, and Windu's own personal unit, the 187th Legion. He worked with a number of clone commanders, most notably Commander Pons and Commander Neo of the 91st, but he didn't get as close with them as some other Jedi did with their commanders. Windu was flexible in this regard, working with whoever and whatever was convenient. Due to the broad scope of his role, Windu spent most of the war on Coruscant, coordinating the units under his command as they put down separatist incursions all over the Republic. Windu was a very different general in a war room than one on the battlefield. Windu was a very different general in a war room than on the battlefield. When he was on Coruscant, overseeing troop movements and grand strategy, he was much more cautious and by the book, carefully weighing crucial decisions and debating courses of action with Yoda and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. When he was personally involved in a battle though, things were different. Windu's approach to battlefield tactics was largely a reflection of his personal combat philosophy, Vaapad. Now, you may have heard of Vaapad, but bear with us here, because it's poorly understood in the fanbase. It's a common misconception that Mace Windu leaned toward the dark side a tad, or that he drew on both the dark side and light side in combat. This wasn't true. Mace Windu was a light sider through and through. Vaapad, however, brought the user through the penumbra of the dark side, making use of the dangerous emotions that Jedi usually tried to avoid. But Vaapad wasn't the use of the dark side, not on its own nor in a smaller dose. To quote the Revenge of the Sith novelization, it worked as follows. Vaapad is a channel for darkness, and that darkness flowed both ways. He accepted the furious speed of the Sith Lord, drew the shadow's rage and power into his innermost center, and let it fountain out again. He reflected the fury upon its source as a lightsaber redirects a blaster bolt. He was not afraid. The darkness had no power over him, but neither did he have power over it. Vaapad made him an open channel, half of a superconducting loop completed by the shadow. Also highly relevant to Windu's battlefield tactics was Shatterpoint, a rare force ability with which Windu was gifted. He could essentially see how certain things affected each other, foresee patterns of cause and effect. His greatest strength was in feeling for Shatterpoints, individuals or things that had the potential to change the future in dramatic ways. To Windu, the world was like a great pane of glass with countless fractures running through it, connecting beings to each other. Some beings lay at the juncture of several major fractures, and if struck, they could shatter the whole pane. Vaapad and Shatterpoint were the foundation of Windu's unorthodox approach to battlefield command. Shatterpoint's utility on the battlefield is kind of obvious. It helped Windu see the flaws in the plans of his enemies and which points to strike to make them break. Vaapad also heavily influenced Windu's approach. The technique itself wasn't suitable for use against multiple combatants, but the general principle of Vaapad was. Much as he could turn Palpatine's anger and hate back toward him, he could completely reverse the momentum of battle, meeting Separatist offensives with devastating countercharges. A good example of Windu using both techniques in a tactical setting was the attack on Lesu during the Battle of Ryloth. When trying to take the heavily defended city of Lesu, Windu first determined the shadow point of the Separatist occupation force, Wat Tambor. He then based his plans around breaking through Separatist lines and quickly capturing Tambor, making everything else a secondary objective. Since Lesu could only be accessed through a single energy bridge controlled from inside the city, some degree of subterfuge was required at the outset of the battle. Ultimately, Windu elected to sneak inside the city with a pair of ARF troopers. Once inside, however, Mace Windu let loose. He sent the clones to take the bridge control room and keep the bridge open so that the bulk of the Joint Republic Twi'lek army could move in. Once they were on their way, Windu made a beeline for the main objective, not waiting for backup and forgetting what his men were doing. He charged toward the Separatists' shadow point and struck it, capturing Tambor. Once Tambor was apprehended, the defense of Lesu crumbled and the battle was won. Ryloth was a pretty typical example of Windu's approach to command. His tactics were usually based around head-on charges, which he always led from the front, mowing down anything within reach of his lightsaber. In every major battle he commanded, the pattern was the same. He found the weak point in the Separatist lines, he led his men in a charge against it, he broke off to complete the objective, and then the clones trailed after him, mopping up whatever was left in his wake. On the surface, this was insanely reckless, and for anyone who wasn't Mace Windu, it would have been a terrible approach. However, it worked for Windu because everything's easy when you're a one-man army. Windu made use of these tactics as early as the first Battle of Geonosis, in which he charged the Separatist grounded troop transports head-on. But perhaps the most dramatic example of Windu's tactics was the Battle of Dantooine. On Dantooine, the course of a field battle was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a Separatist seismic tank, which used a colossal piston to pulverize the battlefield and everything on it. The tank's arrival threw everything into disarray, scattering clone troopers and battle droids alike. Windu lost his lightsaber and was completely cut off from his troops, finding himself alone and unarmed in the middle of a huge droid army. But Mace Windu wasn't one to quit, and he ended up tearing a huge swath through the droids with nothing but the Force and his bare hands. After recovering his lightsaber, Windu led a one-man assault on the seismic tank, bringing the behemoth down and allowing what remained of his unit to win the battle. Yet again, Windu essentially abandoned his men to take out the main objective, and yet again, it worked. One last example of Windu using this approach was during the early stages of the Battle of Coruscant. On Coruscant, the shadow point of the Separatist invasion force was initially unclear, so Windu ended up bouncing between the theaters until he found it. When the battle began, he took to the skies to join the fight in orbit, where the battle was fiercest. But after his fighter was destroyed in the upper atmosphere, he decided to instead commandeer a vulture droid and participate in the sky battle. Once Separatist troops landed in Galactic City, Windu returned to the ground in dramatic fashion, deliberately crushing his stolen craft into the advancing battle droids, leading an army of clones in a counter-offensive against the Separatists. Then, when it finally became apparent that the Separatists' main objective was to kidnap Palpatine, Windu abandoned the ground battle too, leaving it to Yoda. He then made a beeline for the last known position of General Grievous, hoping to take him out and end the battle, though Windu ultimately showed up too late. All told, his performance on Coruscant was a dizzying display of how haphazard his tactics could be, and how he could develop tunnel vision in the heat of battle. Again though, it did work most of the time, so credit where credit's due. In a surprising turn of events, it turns out that Windu was even more chaotic on the battlefield than Anakin Skywalker. Who would have guessed? But what do you think? Are there other characters you'd like us to do a tactical analysis of? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.